Right on, right on.
Awesome. Okay, so we're recording now. Excellent,
Some of you
excellent.
may have to accept recording if that's coming up.
Oh,
I
yes.
Or I
did.
should
I
have
just
said,
did. Okay.
okay, good.
Oh, I hit the OK button.
I hit the OK button.
Okay, good. Jennifer is allowing us to use her Zoom because she runs the Gilbert Baker Film Festival through Zoom.
Oh, right on.
And so generously, she's allowing us to do that because I normally do it through the Riverside app because I fear and resent change.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So I am so sorry we put you through this. I
Oh,
am.
hey, these things
If you
happen.
knew, if you knew how much I admire your work and how embarrassing,
Oh,
this.
don't even worry about it, man.
I, it
I'm not much of a tech guy, which is probably my fault on my end in some goddamn way. So don't even worry about it.
okay, no worries, no worries. Well, this picture of me is so incredibly old. I can't believe it. This is that's pre-pandemic, so I haven't been on Zoom in a long time.
You went through the whole pandemic with no Zoom? Like,
Look at the
wow.
picture. Look at the picture of
I see
me.
it. There's no hair. No facial hair.
But look at all the
Wow.
hair on the top of my head.
Oh, fair enough too.
I'm thinking that's 2018 or nine. Well, I at least went through the entire pandemic without changing my profile photo. Okay, so let me run through. Oh, how am I going to access my script? Is there like a script thing on here? Jennifer, who
Oh,
uses
great,
this all the
great.
time?
Well,
Let's
okay.
see.
You mean like
There's
a
a
way we could
chat.
bring your script into your phone? Yeah, I could paste it into
And
I could possibly do that. Stand by. We're having fun with tech today.
well, if I paste it into the chat, I could see it, right? Let's
I'll
see.
try, yeah. We could do that.
Let me hang
There's
on
a
a
whole new
second.
whiteboard and stuff. I don't use that anymore, but
Well, I'm going to try and paste it because I had some corrections that I made. For instance,
okay.
I only got the name of his movie wrong.
Small details.
Yeah, little things. Oh, and also I had messed up two memories in my head of my Michigan State getting embarrassed by Kansas in the original script, and I had to
There we
correct
go.
it. So
And
just they all blur together for me.
do you go by Dr. Willmott or Professor Willmott?
He's
Just
Or
not a
both?
doctor.
yeah, you can just call me. Yeah, I'm not a doctor. You can just call me Kevin.
Okay, I
Kevin.
didn't know.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I can
Okay,
call
so
you Kevin.
I can
That's
only do it. All right, I can only do it in bits. So I'm going to have to do it. Let's see. Can you guys hear me when I minimize like this or no?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I
yeah.
can hear you.
Okay. Let's see. So, all right. Oh, I forgot you can hear me. So now you're hearing me mutter. Sorry about that. Mm, So,
It says there's a docs and share docs options, which I have not used. We would be learning.
mhm.
Uh, yep, Zoom docs. Uh, could try it. So for what it's worth, since I have a minute, the for the film festival, the films are for this festival. I run it globally and virtually. It started out of Kansas because
Uh-huh.
Gilbert Baker is from
Yeah,
Kansas and they
he's from
started it
Kansas.
there.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
is from Kansas, and it was
yes, yes.
started there, but uh, nobody would go really. And he's passed. I'm one of the two people that are keeping the film festival going, and
Oh, wow.
so I run it from here. The films are on Film Freeway, and
Uh-huh.
so the films are on a platform that's safe and guarded. But I run over, I think I did over 240 hours of interactive, discussion groups and Q and A's and
Wow.
social
Wow.
events on Zoom in conjunction with the festival. So
That's pretty cool.
just,
That's very cool.
yeah, it is pretty cool. It goes well. I have people from all over the world. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's great to you keeping his name, out there too, because he's such a great, American figure.
Oh, you're one of the few people that actually knows who he is when I talk about him straight up. So that's pretty
I
cool.
knew
Yeah.
who he was the first time I talked to you, Jennifer.
Okay, great.
I
You're
just
also
because
magical.
just because I joked about him copywriting the pride flag didn't, I'm offensive.
Oh,
I'm not stupid.
I'm both. I was trying to see if I could use this docs tool. I don't know. I haven't used it. They have so
No,
many new things.
we figured it out. You said I said
Okay.
I can pull my notes up from just minimize, and so yeah, so just
Right.
going over my
That's
notes real quick. So do we guys let's see. You got you know when the intro part when you say your names. Professor Willmott, you've got the big line, which is I'm Kevin Willmott, and this is World Cinema History.
Okay.
Let's get the order straight. So it's going to be I'm Eric Trommater. Erin's going to say she's Erin Brown. Jennifer's going to say she's Jennifer Trujillo. Sila is going to say I'm Sila Blume. And then after Sila, you'll say I'm Kevin Wilmot, and this is World Cinema History. And then I've got some Muddy Waters public domain track I'm going to put underneath your saying that. That's
Right
going to
on.
make you sound super cool.
Very good.
And we're going to use that to lead in to the opening discussion, which is going to have like a typewriter sound behind it that you're not going to be able to hear because we're doing this on Zoom, but
Okay.
where we're just going to really quickly go through all your films that I've seen, right? And at the end of my stating anything about that film, just a couple of words about the movies.
Very cool.
I haven't seen the 2008 film that you made, so I don't have any notes on that one. And I haven't seen the What's Wrong with Kansas
Sure.
documentary that you made about White. So let's just kind of skip those two.
Yeah, of course.
If that's okay with you. I just haven't I haven't been able to find them on streaming.
No, they're not on stream. They're kind of local. Those are kind of local movies.
Right, but I am. But you saw I'm going to have the joke about the Jayhawks movie about it being in black and white, just like my nightmares from the 1986.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in the opening, I had confused the 2009 North Carolina Tar Heels defeat for my Spartans.
Oh, yes.
With the Jayhawks, so I'm going to change. I'm going to have to change the opening joke to just refer back to the 1986 twice.
Okay, very good.
So, but that's the only change. Well, that and I got the name of Destination Planet Negro correct.
Yes.
Other than that, do not worry about the script being like a guide. We can flummox off it or on it. But
Okay.
at the end of it, I've decided, after listening to our last episode on Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin, it had a flaw. It was that we kept wandering off into modern politics and then coming back to the movie, and then wandering off into modern politics and then coming back into the movie. So I decided I'm going to have an ending section of this episode where I'm going to ask the entire panel, including you, are we currently living in the Confederate States of America? And we can get all our modern politics into that one section, so we don't get off topic.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So okay, yeah. Other than that, this always just takes on a life of its own anyway.
Okay, very good.
And we actually encourage people to interrupt each other here. I'll fix it in the editing. but because I would rather have, that editing headache than have something that doesn't feel like a real conversation.
Right. Okay.
So, so if somebody says something and you're talking over them, we are, we know each other well enough. We just mute and let you go,
Very cool.
and if somebody forgets what they had to say, say la vie can't have been that important anyway.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
All right. So, I'm going to start. Usually I have a countdown, but I'll just do like say something to the effect of World Cinema History Kevin Willmott interview or something like that. So here we go. World Cinema History Kevin Willmott episode. The panel and I were looking at the guest list and we realized that this show is finally chasing down its own version of the EGOT. We have Kevin Willmott here today, our first Oscar winner. And next week we have Jethro Waters, who has won an Emmy on his shelf, who has an Emmy on his shelf. Now we just need to find a Grammy and a Tony winner to round out the panel. So if you're out there and you've got the hardware, you're opposite line. We got a chair waiting for you. As I mentioned, today's guest is Kevin Willmott, who won an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for co-writing Spike Lee's Black KKK Klansman. And despite the fact that, as we established last week, Paul Haggis had already solved racism in 2004 with Crash. Kevin, didn't you get the memo?
Yes, that's good.
But we're not here to talk about Spike Lee. We're here to talk about the other Kevin Willmott, who has left a legacy as an independent filmmaker and satirist from his perch at the University of Kansas. Last week, we looked at Ralph Bakshi, a nihilistic journeyman who produced 3 great works, Fritz the Cat, Heavy Traffic, and Coonskin. This week, we are turning to a genuine craftsman, a cinematic arsonist whose knowledge of the visual language of movie making has transformed the art. Welcome to the show, Kevin Willmott. Just say thank you or whatever.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
I fully expect you to blow our audience away today, just as my 1986 Spartans were blown away in overtime in the Sweet 16 by your Jayhawks. That was, of course, a game where the clock itself seemed to stop, mysteriously, leaving a generation of fans like myself to wonder, what if? What if is the subject of today's episode. As Kevin's 2004 mockumentary, CSA, the Confederate States of America, asks, what if the South had won the Civil War? I'm Eric Trommater.
I'm Erin Brown.
I'm Sila.
I'm Jennifer.
Sorry.
I'm Jennifer Trujillo.
I'm Sila Blume.
And I'm Kevin Willmott, and this is World Cinema History.
Before we dive deep into CSA, here's a rogues gallery of Kevin's other work as an independent spirit. The first film that I know Kevin for was 9th Street in 1999, which I thought was memorable for getting Martin Sheen, Isaac Hayes, and Casey Moore into one feature out of Junction City. It's quite a heavy lineup, Kevin. The other story was I heard that you had actually dragged the negative on the ground to give it a scratched up older look, which I kind of is that the ultimate slashing your own canvas in pursuit of art?
Well, it was more like we just were making the movie any kind of way we could. That's kind of how I got dragged around, I think, a little bit. But that was as good as we could get it, at the time.
It was a wonderful first feature, and I was incredibly impressed by that. But how were you able to put together such a stellar cast and a stellar soundtrack?
Well, that film, that was really my first film. And, I'd made a couple of little small videos, but 9th Street started out as a play. And really, I came back to Kansas. I was, went to NYU and was living in New York for a few years trying to get started. But I kind of figured out that I needed to go back home to Kansas to try to get a film made because no one knew me in New York, and so no one no one was going to give me an opportunity there, really. So I came back to Kansas, and that movie took me 9 years to make. And the good thing about the 9 years was that, I would, raise a little bit of money and shoot some, and so along the way, good things happen. I kind of found a contact that put me in touch with Isaac Hayes, and I found another contact that put me in touch with Martin Sheen. He was in Topeka making a mini series, and so I went and saw him, and he was kind enough to give me an afternoon. So I quickly wrote him into the script, and we shot him in one afternoon. But I kind of was able to weave him kind of all through the movie, and I really kind of just took advantage of the not having any money, and really embracing, and instead of it being a negative, it kind of turned into a positive. And I was able to get Isaac, and I was able to get Casey Moore lived in Kansas City, and I was able to find her, and so it's just bad and good things all coming together.
Now, I haven't seen your next film after that, which is apparently called Bunker Hill. I haven't seen that one, but your 2012 film Destination Planet Negro is notable. First, of course, you voiced a robot named Strom Thurmond
Yes.
in the film, which it will never not be funny to me. But that you produced it for $5,000, and that almost all of it went to catering. Erin Brown on our panel named her company Pizza Horse Productions, because her first budget was literally pizza. Is this just a Kansas thing?
It was a Kansas thing. I knew no one was ever going to give me any money to make this film. So I just decided to ask everybody to work for free. And, so I just called in all my buddies, and I think we all kind of liked it enough to just do it. And again, I knew it was going to take me a while. It took me about 3 years to make that film. We did it a little bit at a time, mainly weekends and that kind of stuff. And I wrote it knowing that it was going to take me a long time, and so I structured it that way. And I wrote it kind of knowing what I had access to as well. And one of the reasons I played one of the leads is because I knew I would show up. So that was kind of how that project was made, and that's ended up being one of my favorite films. Really, I think what the movie's about, and the fun we had making it, and it was just a great time.
I found it streaming on Netflix to rewatch for this episode, by the way.
Oh,
So
wow.
people can still watch it today.
Wow, very cool.
So we're going to skip over the next few years. Apparently, you and Spike Lee made some movies together, and you won an Oscar or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, something like that.
the next
Good guy.
the next time you arrived on my radar was in 2020 with your film The 24th, which was important, I thought, to me, simply because I saw it right after the George Floyd murder, and it was important to me to be sitting in a community of people at a movie theater, being able to watch a film on this subject. But it turns out I was one of very few people who saw this in the theaters.
Yes.
Because it only had a release for film festivals, and most people had to watch it on streaming, which I highly recommend it as an excellent film. But the other thing that I think is even more impressive than the film itself is you shot it in 18 days. That's 2 days less than we were blowing smoke up Godard's ass for Breathless for doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did it, we did it fast, and but it didn't seem fast for the most part. I mean, the last night we shot, it was a night shoot, and we shot until the sun came up. We had to stop, but that was the only day I really felt like really rushed, and But it was again another great shoot. That's a movie that I had been wanting to make for a very long time. The Houston riot of 1917. I'm as you can see, I'm kind of a history guy. Um, that's another one of these stories that Hollywood's never going to tell.
And we're a history podcast, so it works.
So yeah, that movie again was something I've been trying to make for a long time. Finally, after I'd won the Oscar, that kind of gave me enough cachet to get a little money, and so Trey Byers and I, who was a former student of mine, we wrote it. I mean, I kind of initially wrote it, and then we wrote it kind of to make it, kind of, and with Trey, knowing Trey was going to play the lead, so we kind of rewrote it with that in mind. And so yeah, it was a beautiful time. I mean, it really
Can
important
you
story.
repeat that line, but with introducing Trey with his full name and talking about empire, so people who aren't super familiar know who we're talking about? Real
Sure.
quick.
So we decided to when I won the Oscar, I had enough cachet to get a little money, and so we were able to I got together with a former student of mine. His name is Trey Byers, who's you know noted for his great work on the TV show Empire. He played one of the sons on the show, and we got together and just really rewrote it with Trey, in mind playing the lead, and we were able to get a really great cast, and we shot it in North Carolina, and it just worked out really well. Just very proud of the film. I'm really proud of it because it's a piece. It tells a piece of history that America knows very little about. And after our film was made and got out there, COVID came and really killed our theatrical release, obviously. And but people have kind of, I think, been finding it on streaming since then. And the thing that I'm really proud of is that it's really one of those American stories that America has really buried. I mean, it's the only riot in American history that more white people died than black people, and the men of the 24th Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers, they were sent to Houston, Texas, in 1917, and the police were just brutalizing them, and just simple as that. And these guys had, a lot of them had fought on San Juan Hill in the Spanish-American War, had fought in the Philippines during the Philippine insurrection. And so they were used to, being treated with a certain degree of respect. And when they got to Houston, the Houston police were just bloodthirsty rednecks. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And they just brutalized them. And so about 100 troops marched on Houston, Texas, and went after the police. And so they've always buried that story, in American history because of the racial discomfort, which of course racial discomfort is kind of up my alley. So of course I want to tell that story.
Everybody has to have a hobby, right, Kevin?
That's right.
Speaking of things that are up your alley, a film that we didn't mention, The Only Good Indian, was set during this period, but you seem to have a fascination with the 1880s, the so-called redemption period. What is it about the 1880s over, say, the 1860s in American history that keeps bringing you back time and time again?
Well, I think the 1880s, that whole period really after the Civil War up until, the 1900s and stuff, is the thing that defines us as Americans. I mean, it defined American life. And that's when everyone tried to start becoming real American citizens. And that's when women start to get to vote there and become suffragettes. And that's when Black people, are given citizenship and start to try to become full-fledged American citizens, and that's when all the backlash starts. That's where, segregation begins, and that's when the lynching starts, and all the horrors of American life begin then, and that conflict of people trying to become citizens is kind of what America is really all about, and that's the struggle we're still in now. And so that struggle is, I think, the American struggle, and that's also what most Americans know very little about. Most Americans, kind of after the Civil War, they know a few battles in the Civil War. They may know, Grant and Lee, they know Abraham Lincoln, but they don't know many details about any of that. And they know nothing that happens from after the Civil War until, probably Pearl Harbor, 1941 or something. And but that period, that 1870s, 1880s, 1890s into the teens is the thing that defines American life in so many ways today. And so I've always kind of been attracted to that period.
Now, speaking of history, we have an ongoing debate on this show that my claim is the inventor of the mockumentary was Peter Watkins with Culloden and The War Game in the late 1960s. There were people here who debated me on this, but saying that they weren't actually mockumentaries.
And we still will.
And
we will still debate you on that.
I'd lose respect for you if you didn't, Erin. But what were some of the things when you went to go make CSA, which is a mockumentary that imagines that the South had won the Civil War? What were some of the influences that you had that helped you come up with this concept, which itself is quite clever, but is also exceptionally done at a very high comic level throughout this film?
Well, my big influence on that was actually a TV show. There was a TV show in the 70s called Appointment with Destiny. And it was kind of a version of You Are There. It was on CBS. And it took kind of episodes of history, various important moments in history, and approached them like a documentary, as if like you could, like movie cameras were there, existed. So they would do like Jesse James, and you could interview Jesse James like a camera existed back then, and like they did one on the crucifixion of Jesus, and they did one on Jesse James and John Dillinger, and all these really cool kind of moments in history, and that kind of what if there was a camera available to you kind of. And they shot it just like a documentary. It was really, it was really cool. And that they got some of these episodes on YouTube now. It's called Appointment with Destiny. And so I saw that as a kid, and it just really, really kind of has always stayed with me. And the whole thing of making it look like a documentary, making the footage look like, a documentary, and doing the fake interviews, and really embracing the provocative nature of what if you could talk to Jesse James, back when he was robbing banks, and John Dillinger, if you could talk to him, and that kind of thing was really, really cool. So that nerdy, geeky part of me has always stayed with that. But then, obviously, it was the project more than anything came out of my frustration with Hollywood about the issue of slavery. The first screenplay I sold was with my buddy Mitch Bryan. We wrote this screenplay about John Brown, the abolitionist. And it was told from the point of view of Shields Green, which was who was an enslaved man who was hung with John Brown. and the script was called Shields Green and the Gospel of John Brown. And we sold it to 20th Century Fox. It was a big sale. And the Chris Columbus with 1492 Productions, the guy that did Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, that stuff, he actually bought the script. It was going to be kind
And
of
Harry Potter.
and Harry Potter, yes, he was going to be kind of one of his rare dramatic kind of entries. And
His
but
daughter, by the way, listens to this show.
is that right? Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So hi, Molly.
And you know, so that sale got us into it. But then we kind of ran into a lot of, after that, when we would try to write other things about slavery or anything with kind of Black history kind of stuff, you'd always get this, well, Amistad didn't do well, Beloved didn't do well, and do well meaning money, didn't make a lot of money. And so, Black history, especially things connected to slavery, has always been a tough sell in Hollywood. And so I kind of, that frustration led me to really want to make a movie about, something that made slavery connected to today, so that, you kind of take it in the past and you make people feel it today. And I was also very frustrated with the Confederate flag being still flying over the state house in South Carolina and on a lot of people's cars. Even I live in Kansas, it was on people's cars out here still today.
If only you knew then.
Yes.
What the future was going to be.
Oh man, my God. And so it really came out of my frustration with all of that. And so that all of those things combined to kind of create CSA.
And it's a double satire, because you're not only satiring these stereotypes, these tropes, you're also satiring the BBC and the Ken Burns documentary. I think the perfect example of that is the Sherman Hoyle character, who is obviously meant to mimic the rhythm of Shelby Foote. But I felt a bit of Walker Percy in there too, because he had this kind of a detached philosopher thing that Walker Percy does and Shelby Foote really doesn't. Is that a deliberate homage to the Southern Man of Letters archetype, or is Walker's just become so convenient a cliche for that kind of thing?
Well, I was thinking, excuse me, I was thinking of Shelby Foote, but man, my dear late friend, Rupert Pate, who plays Hoyle in the film, he was a philosopher himself and a historian and a great guy, a great friend. And so, yeah, I think you get a little bit of Rupert actually in there. So he's probably the guy that's connecting to Percy there, just his own intellectual, muscle.
Hopefully he didn't become as reactionary as Walker.
No, he's a beautiful liberal hip brother, but yeah, I mean, I think that's probably where you pick up a little bit of that.
Well, my last question before we open it up to the panel is about the sort of Uncle Ben little bits throughout this, which we'll discuss in more detail in terms of the fake television commercials and the products throughout it. And the real gut punch comes at the end when we find out that almost all of these were real products at one point. Was there anything in your research where you found a real product, but you thought, I'm not going to use that one because no one's actually ever going to believe it?
I'm not really. I mean, I felt I try to use the ones that I thought I could kind of make a commercial out of. And most of those products disappeared after the civil rights movement. And so when the CSA had won, there obviously there's no civil rights movement. And so all those racist, horrible things would have just kept going. And there was a lot of them. The big challenge was kind of picking the one to kind of satire and turn into a modern commercial. But yeah, no, there was not any that I that I steered away from. I mean, nigger hair tobacco ended up being nigger hair cigarettes in the film, was probably the biggest, slasher because of obviously with the big N in the word. But I think
And the hard R.
yes, and the hard R, yes, and the hard R. Uh, the thing that I think it's just kind of that one allowed me to make the audience, I think, believe, because we don't know much of this history because it's been so buried and hidden from us in various ways, untaught. Um, that that we're just, the movie is being just juvenile and reckless, and that we're just being racist ourselves and doing these horrible things. Then you find out that this is who we are as Americans, and like I said, that delivers a gut punch. And so that one allowed me to kind of, it was more about the placement of it more than anything. It's like, as the commercials go along, they kind of get worse and worse and crazier and crazier. And that was purposeful in terms of kind of making the audience believe that it starts out as kind of an all in the family kind of, safe satire kind of thing. And then as it goes along, the knives start to come out and we start to poke people a lot harder. And finally you really kind of, I mean, one story I heard from a friend that saw the movie in a theater in Omaha, Nebraska, and he said some skinheads were in the audience, and they just thought the movie was a hoot. But as the movie went along, they got quieter and quieter, and eventually they just walked out. And that was exactly how I designed it, in terms of making people, racist people, and it's funny because the racist people, somebody must have told them, you need to go see this movie because it's really, it really makes fun of black people or something. So they go there thinking that, and then as the movie goes along, it becomes, the narrative becomes more serious and it becomes more modern, and you start to see the attack on us today in terms of, Reagan and the 80s and all the things that at the time were still very prevalent in society. And so they didn't enjoy that part, so they left. And then it's the opposite, where you've got, liberal folks who, are kind of not wanting to be challenged either in various ways. And they feel it's kind of safe in the beginning, but then as it goes along, then they find out that it's about a lot of things they didn't know much about.
Well, I'm going to turn this over to Erin, who's not that far from you. You're what, about 30 miles outside of Lawrence right now?
I'm
and
in the Kansas City area.
yeah.
Hey, Erin.
Hello.
What is it about the Lawrence and the studio system there that allows you to do these kind of works real quick before we get to Erin? And I'm asking both Erin and you, because I've heard two stories of entire film budgets being dedicated to catering, and they were both from one was from Erin Brown, and the other is from Kevin Willmott.
Well, I let Erin speak on this too, but I think we're not jaded by movies out here. We're not jaded by film. I mean, we don't get and when I first moved here, I grew up in Kansas, but I didn't grow up in Lawrence. And when I first moved here, we occasionally got Hollywood movies through here, and the day after was shot here, and so, but that doesn't happen much anymore. But I taught at the film school here at KU, and so we got a lot of budding filmmakers and a lot of filmmakers in the area, and some very talented people around. And they make movies, and people kind of help each other get their movies made. And that's one of the reasons I decided to stay here, was that the Kansas City, Lawrence area is really great for helping each other to try to get their movie made. And it's just one of the hip things about being in small town USA.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well with films is everybody pitches in. Like you can't pay them, but you can feed them, and then you trade work. You'll work on their film, they'll work on your film. Um, you can write a script, and one of your friends will be like, "That's funny, I want to shoot that." It's really collaborative. It's a lot of fun. It's a much more artistic area than I think we're given credit for, honestly.
No doubt about it. And I think that that collaborative thing has helped me in so many ways. And when I make, features now, and people always talk about how collaborative I am, and it's kind of, I think, partly because I grew up making these movies the way I did, where you had to give people a sense of ownership with your movie, and that sense of ownership is kind of one of the things that people don't probably see a lot of in studio films.
I don't know if the studio system is really set up the same way, honestly. I mean, we're all just doing this for
That's
the hell of it, you know?
that's exactly right. And everything is, everything is so the money is such a, restrictive pressure device on everything that uh, it kind of eliminates the notion of collaborative. And you've got to know exactly what you're doing all the time, and there's no room for discussion about things. And not that I discuss things on the set, but when you make any movie that you make that's have some sense of restriction on the budget, you're having these conversations with all your departments about how you're going to do all these great things you got planned, and for not enough money. And that's really where the collaboration comes from, because most people, they want to do the best they can for you within the parameters that you can give them. And to me, that's always been a fun challenge. It's not something I see as a problem. When problems happen, in terms of budgetary problems happen in a production, I embrace those situations. And I mean, I've learned from years of working with no budgets that usually there's a really great solution, and one that typically is often better than the idea you had in the first place.
Between you and me, Kevin, if you'd had the budget to recreate the clown's mouth for the Coon Chicken Inn, that would have been in the movie, right?
Yes. Yeah, I could not have escaped that one. That's exactly right. You know,
My
even though
only disappointment was not having somebody take a camera through that clown's mouth.
even though if I had made it, then people would not have believed it. So it's kind of, there's those things of seeing the actual photograph is kind of,
Well, going back a year ago when I first came up with this schedule for Black History Month for World Cinema History, the idea of linking Tuki Buki, Black Girl, and Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin all came because I had recently rewatched your film, and the Coon Chicken Inn reminded me, and that's when I got the idea of Coonskin,
oh
and
yeah.
then and so naturally, when we were looking for a fourth, I was like, well, that's the film. And then Erin was like, hey, I know that guy, and I was like, oh.
Oh, very cool.
Erin, this is the first film in a long time that I haven't got a text from you saying, wow, what a fucked up movie.
I really liked
So
it. It was really good.
for that alone, I give you thanks, Kevin. But go ahead. But Erin, your questions for Kevin Willmott.
Something that was funny about the Coon Chicken Inn, I didn't know that was real. I was when it popped up in your movie, I just remembered it was a plot point in Ghost World that
Yes.
Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi's character collected memorabilia from Cook's Chicken, and I was like, wait a minute. Then at the end, when you said it's a real thing, I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. Um, I had no idea it was real. I really liked revealing at the end that these products were real,
Yeah.
because we don't think about that.
Right.
Also, like, how long did it take to do all the research to make all the different bits of this film in so many different styles? Because that was incredibly impressive. You know, you got the commercials, then you got the movie clips and different genres of movies. That was amazing. How long did that take to do that?
Well, this movie took about 3 years to shoot. And again, I never had over, about $5,000-6,000 at a time. And, and my cinematographer, Matt Jacobson, who's a professor at KU as well, he's the guy, he's the genius behind all the looks of the film. I mean, he really did the research, and we had a lot of fun with that. That's one of the things where you use the time to your advantage. You really, when we went and shot uh, the the DW Griffith, Search for Dishonest Abe movie. We went out in the country and found some reenactor guys that would do it with us, I think he shot it on like a Bolex kind of handheld Bolex kind of thing, and then and we really did scrape the negative up on a couple things specifically on the footage of Abraham Lincoln, where before he dies in Canada, and just a little bit of early film footage of him talking, and then we did all the work on how it would have been recorded, and the recording would have been, you know, um, jarring and out of sync and stuff. And so, all of that was a lot of fun. And I remember one of the best compliments I received when the lab got the footage. He said, "How did you get this?" I think they actually thought it was Lincoln, that he had, there was some film footage of Lincoln or something that we had found. It's like, no, he died way before movie cameras, but yeah, that part of things. We always try to shoot it the way um, it would have existed in real life. I mean, like the Hollywood movie we shot on 35, and the commercials we shot on video, and so and that was a little weird for us because when we had to put it all together for the feature release, this is when digital was just starting, really. And so they had trouble syncing up the video and this and all the different all the different formats we were dealing with. They had some trouble kind of, putting them all together into one format. And we finally figured it all out, but it was tricky there for a minute. And but that was all about trying to make it look the way it would look in reality.
Yeah, and it did look amazing.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, it's having seen this in the theater, though, the blowing up of the video to 35 millimeter actually enhances the feeling that you're watching. You forget you're in a movie theater for a minute. And so actually it's to the benefit of this film, the blow up process so if it had been modern day where you just do everything digital and then can just throw it out in a theater, actually I don't think this would have visually been as interesting a film to watch in a theater.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, now it's just so easy to do all of that, but not nearly as kind of that grainy, I mean, you've got artificial grain you can put on things obviously now and stuff, but it's not quite the same thing. And there's
it's like putting artificial hiss to make it sound like you're listening to a record. You're not listening to a record.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So yeah, I mean, if I had to do all over it, I would still do it that same way because we had a lot of fun doing it for one thing, and our students would help us with these things, and so our students would participate, and they were the crew, and so it was really great in that sense.
You got to do a recent film showing of this in 35 millimeter there in Lawrence. How 22 years later, how are people reacting today?
Oh, I mean, the same as they did back when it first came out, and it's actually just 20 years. I mean, we sold it, but it didn't come out until like 2 years later. I mean, when we sold the film to IFC, then I think they got scared of it, and it wasn't until Owen Gleiberman did an article in Entertainment Weekly, and he kind of said, "Why hasn't this great film been released?" That IFC then released it, and they didn't know how to market it. They didn't know how to sell it. I mean, I never could be on TV talking about it because you know the Today Show or something like that could not talk about something like this, and it just I learned so much about the limitations in American life of race and how. Um, the discomfort that people have, liberal and conservative, about race and about um, how hard it is to have an honest conversation about American history um, because of that discomfort. And so it's just, I mean, the movie just, it just continues to be this. Um, I kind of believe it's the most controversial film ever made in, American history. And I say that because it's, people have been fired because of the movie. People, people have had, they showed the movie at the Dalton School a few years ago, and the New York Times called me and said, they showed the school, and there was a big uproar against it, and the principal had to apologize to the school for showing it. Um, and but there's no sex, there's no violence, there's no bad language. It's just American history.
But there's satire.
And there's satire, yes. But
Satire is much more offensive than sex violence or bad language to
that's exactly
America.
right. That's exactly right. That's
Last
exactly
week
right.
when we were discussing Coonskin, which we all agreed is a racist movie, but we also all agreed that that wasn't what made us feel uncomfortable. It was the satire.
Yeah, when I saw Coonskin in the theater as a kid, and I didn't quite get it as a kid. I mean, I didn't, it didn't offend me. I just didn't quite get the joke, and I was probably maybe not hip enough at the time to get it. But I think the
You
problem, like,
weren't smoking the right stuff.
I think that was probably the deal. Yes, and that back in those days, guys would do that. You'd go, you'd make a movie, and it was like for the doper crowd, kind of thing. Um, and whereas CSA is kind of geared for the very, for American citizens and very sober, paying attention to the world kind of folks, and that's where it's so offensive because they know what it is, but they don't want to talk about it.
Erin, did you have anything else before we wake Jennifer up?
Um, I was just going to say to agree with what Kevin's saying. The number of times I went, "Oh my God," watching this movie was, a record number because I mean, there's stuff that was like kind of shocking, but it was important to see it and absorb it and understand what is being said. So I really liked the movie. I also really loved the music, how um, it was like what American music would sound like without the influence of Black Americans. Um,
Yes.
and it sounded
Spoiler
like Lawrence
alert,
Welk.
not very good.
Yeah,
Right.
it
Yeah.
was so bad, but it was hilarious. And I mean, even the weird bluegrassy cover of Bad Boys at the parody of Cops was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, we had that was a lot of fun too. And there were so many people that contributed things that and when they got they got the joke. I mean, they got kind of without trying to be funny. I mean, they would just did it with the with all that what if in mind, and it's just funny. So you don't have to really try to be funny. It's just what it is, and you put it in the right context, and it's funny. It's
Well, I
absurd.
don't think you have to have a knowledge of the lost cause narrative to laugh your ass off at the reversal of the lost cause narrative in the industrial North in this film. I don't think that's even an intellectual joke. That's just funny, no matter how much you know about history.
I also like the. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I liked how political things tracked from the Civil War forward. Like the Republican and Democrat parties were switched, because early on that's what they were before they changed in the early 20th century.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting, and the fact that women still didn't have the right to vote because look who won the war. I love the actual historical facts that were carried forward. Like, what really would it be like? And it's like, yeah, that's horrible and terrifying, and I'm glad that's not how it turned out. And I'll save the current political stuff for later, as we discussed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Not to get into that too deep, but that's the thing that the screenings I've had in the last couple of years here have all talked about. How prescient the film is and how much it speaks about now. And
which
we
we'll
thought
get to at the end of the episode.
Yeah, we thought we were talking about things then, but it really has another level now.
Jennifer Trujillo, are you awake?
Present. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Your questions for Kevin Willmott.
Oh, now you're waking me up for that. That's not fair. I don't.
Or comments, or you hosting this on Zoom is wonderful, but we love having you on the show as a contributor as well.
Understood.
We can come back to you if you want to think about something. That's fine.
One thing I would say is that, I'm grateful that you made the film. I'm grateful that it exists, and I hear what you're saying, that it could be one of the most controversial films ever made, because it definitely, I'm just proud of you and grateful that you did it, and that you seem to enjoy making people uncomfortable in this, but it's necessary. So thanks for that, I would say. Did you say earlier, and I missed it, like what inspired you and how did you start going down this road? And then how many things did you leave out that you would have put in? Like, I can't imagine. There's so many other things that I feel like you could have put into the film.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough thing, is that there's so many connections to excuse me, to history, that and what I call reversing the history. What Erin was talking about earlier, about how how women don't get to vote, and gay rights don't exist, and you just go down a list of all the things that don't happen, and that was kind of the fun history geek part of me. I had a lot of fun with that, because everything that's happened historically in American life has always been, a struggle. I mean, no one said, "Hey, let's give women rights," women had to fight for it, and there was, and suffragettes had to go through a lot of crap for that, and there were some people that got it, and there were some people that really fought it, and that's the case in everything, and with obviously with African Americans, and every racial group in the United States. I have that section in the film about what happens to the Japanese during World War II, and so I always kind of embraced it I embraced the history based on the footage that I had access to. So I used internment camp photos in after World War II, for that section of the film. And so the movie's kind of commenting on the what if, but it's also commenting on the what is. So I'm always trying to make a double, give you a kind of double whammy, a double point in terms of what the what if of the CSA is saying and the what is of the USA, because I was actually more interested in the what is of the USA, because again, my intent was always to try to make history and slavery specifically real to people. One of the problems of slavery, American slavery, is that there is no film footage of it. Uh, the thing with the Holocaust, that's why the Holocaust films are so important, and that's why Spielberg knows that if the Nazi people in the United States and the world, if they could, they would get rid of all of that footage so they could say it never happened. Well, that's why people still today don't believe slavery was that bad of a deal, and they don't believe the horrors of slavery, and they want to believe all the bad Hollywood movies that were made that made slavery not seem so bad. So that's for a lot of different reasons. But the big one is that they just didn't care about African Americans, and they didn't care about the pain of slavery and the problems of slavery. And so you always get slavery through the point of view of Scarlett O'Hara in one version or another. And that is a problem, and that continues to be a problem still today, and people still don't really understand. That's why, when people do have these current attacks on things, it's hard to respond, because people don't understand the real horrors of slavery, and because they don't see it in movies. They don't see it in movies. They never have seen it much in movies. I mean, Roots was a big deal because Roots was the first time that it really kind of showed you kind of what was going on, how it really happened. And that was still pretty tame compared to, the reality of slavery. But it was great because it reached a lot of Americans. And for the first time, Americans took a moment and said, oh, so that's what happened during slavery. And felt it, which is not just an intellectual thing, but they had to feel it too. And so feeling it was the thing that made it have such an impact. But we've not had nearly the education or nearly the emotional education that we should have about these things. And my argument, I'll save this for later some, but my argument is that if you feel those things now, then you tend not to repeat them later.
Wait, can you elaborate on that? Meaning if you...
Well, that some of the things that we're seeing now are because people don't really understand when they happened earlier in American life, and they just don't kind of make those connections between kind of some of the horrors you're starting to see now in this country and the horrors that we've already experienced in our history. And the fact that you don't know those details of how things unfolded in our history, especially the emotional details of it, that to me is the thing I always kind of try to come back to. When you don't feel these things, you tend not to retain them. You tend not to kind of understand them in detail enough to kind of make connections to today.
Well, like
Yeah.
thankfully, for instance, after you and Spike Lee made a Black KKK Klansman, Hollywood released the Green Book later that year,
Yes.
so that we could solve racism again.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, and see, I just don't believe audiences are better than that. Even if they're not, they need to be, and we need to make them better than that. And what I mean by that is that you don't, that the challenge that something like CSA or Black Klansman or this 24th does is that I grew up in the 70s with all these great 70s movies, and the movies of the 70s always challenged you in various ways. And audiences, I believe, still want to be challenged. And if they don't want to be challenged, it's because they just don't know don't want to be challenged, but they really do want to be challenged. And so, when they try to tame things down and kind of give you things that are a nice liberal kind of, movie that, you don't have to feel too bad about in the end. Um, those things you don't retain that stuff at all. You don't learn anything, you don't retain anything. Those movies disappear. And it's those things that it's the fact that, Evelyn Mulwray gets shot in the head in China, gets shot in the eye in Chinatown, you know, and it's so bad at the end that you remember that ending of Chinatown because it is bad. And it says, damn, the corruption often wins, and the good guys more than time often they often lose.
Sila Blume, any questions for Kevin Willmott?
Hello, William, Kevin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I First of all,
We've got the battle of the great baritones here.
I want to make a silly comment about the problem with the movie. When Erin said that you did everything so many complexities to the film, I find it is so well done to the point that a person who's not well informed will get confused. And will, just like Erin said about certain things that were reality, but because it's so blended so well, you kind of forget where reality is, where is satire, where is documentary really, and where is mockumentary. So I find very interesting, and I see that also as one of the big problems whenever we are dealing with anything that has to do with two sides. That could be the left and the right, or the extreme left or the extreme right. When I've been saying this for years, if I go to a person and I say to them, look, you are being incorrect, you have no right to go and spit at a person just because they're from another race, whichever that race may be.
Right.
That person could turn around and say to me, well, that's my opinion. That he could say to me, that's your opinion. And that person is correct. It's my opinion. There is no absolute rule in life that says I cannot do this to that. You know,
Hmm.
if we take
Yes.
nature, um, nature does not say anywhere that I should not kill a nice little puppy. We have acquired through uh, through seeing things through our grandparents, through our parents, through our siblings. We have seen the things we should do, but they are not absolute rules. So when I met certain people in Germany who experienced the war, the Second World War, they said certain things to me that show me that they are honestly seeing things from their perspective without being racist. They are just, they live in that particular view of the world. And when I consider many of the so-called friends that I have right now, who I've been meeting with regularly every week where I work, they are following a certain political direction that I don't want to go into right now. And I see in them the same problem. Even though they have some weird views about what a Mexican is and what a black person is, they're not bad people. They're not really racist. I don't know where that comes from, and I don't have any way of saying to them, for this factual reason, you shouldn't think this and this and this way. So when I do a film like the one you did, I'm asking myself, who would I be speaking to? And perhaps who are you trying to address? Because on one side, you're showing the film to, let's say, just for the sake of names, you're showing the film to people on the left, which agree with you. You're
Right.
showing it to people on the right, which most likely don't agree with you. So, are you trying to remind the people on the left that they are right, or are you trying to prove something to the right to convince them otherwise, which actually I don't really know if we can do that. And that's why I was wondering, in those people that went to the film, to that screening, and you said that they walked out, I was wondering, why did they walk out? What happens in the soul of a person to suddenly see something new, which they should have seen all along? I don't know what happens, why they don't see it, why they suddenly see it, which is what I found very interesting in American History X, where you have the white guy and the black guy become friends in prison for no reason, except that they're humans.
Right.
But we have somehow no way, in my opinion, we have no way, I don't care if I'm in Japan, Germany, New York City, Idaho, I have no way of really making clear to any human being this is wrong and this is right. Or this is wrong and it's too extreme, and you have no reason that you can show me for which to do that. So when we see some of the people in the movie with their conviction and sentimentality and their this drama on their face and their smile and their accentuation of certain things, how they are so convinced of what they're doing, even though we know that they're wrong. So how do you convince that person, look, I understand that you're sincere, but how can I suggest that you open your eyes? I mean, these things, this topic and this difficulty with those both sides really makes me crazy because I don't see how we can move forward by accepting that we are all the same.
Yeah,
Well,
Kevin, why
obviously,
didn't you solve racism?
yeah. Well, I'm trying my best here. Well, what it really comes down to is belief systems,
Oh,
and
Haggis solved it.
then that the skinheads that saw the film, I would probably say that when you start to challenge someone's belief system, then they pull back. They just pull back. I've seen it. I've been black
But
my whole
why?
life.
But why do they
Well,
pull back?
well, because they
Because
they
they
don't want
realize they were wrong?
no, because they don't want to change. They don't want the truth. They don't. That's why you have Fox News because I want to hear what I want to hear, and I don't want to have anybody tell me the other side of the story. And so because I don't want to be challenged, I don't want to feel something that I don't want to feel. I don't want to care about someone I don't want to care about, you know? And so, you know, that's why the other side always wants to sell what they're selling, and what they're selling, they try to sell it with your counter argument in mind because they don't want the person that's taking it in to question it on any level. And the minute that their belief system gets challenged, and maybe a dialogue might start. Maybe a dialogue. Maybe you might ask a question. Maybe you might come back home, and on the way from seeing CSA, you might have a conversation with your wife or husband or friend and say, I wonder about this. And they don't want you to do that because the minute you start questioning things, then that's when things start to kind of maybe you have the opportunity to start opening up a little bit. Maybe you'll go back and you'll rethink something. Maybe you'll go back and see something differently now that you've always looked at one way and now you see it maybe a slightly different way.
Well, I
You know,
have a question for both you and Sila then. How is it that the same people who are standing up against trans rights right now with this tiny minority in the population are the same people who were on the wrong side of history about gay marriage, who are the same people who were on the wrong side of history about the Iraq War, who are the same people who were on the wrong side of history about miscegenation and interracial marriage and civil rights, and the idea that people of other races are even human. These exact same people can be so convinced that they're right this time. This time, though, this is the line. I am correct on this. Yeah, we were wrong last time. But no.
See, I think all of those things come from the same place, which is a limiting freedom. I mean, that's why the CSA for me becomes the metaphor of American life. So you have two choices as an American. You can believe in the USA or you can believe in the CSA. And the USA grants freedom. It expands freedom. It wants to, so as we learn things, so I didn't know, I didn't really understand gay people. So now that they're explaining who they are, maybe we should embrace that, and maybe they should have rights, and maybe there's a such thing as trans people. Oh, okay, well maybe we need to make sure they're protected, and that we should expand our protections and their rights and make sure people understand them, and we should study what's going on with them, and they should talk about who they are freely and openly, and we all learn from that. That is not that's the CSA, and everything you laid out, Eric, that is the opposite of expanding freedom, and that is the challenge of American life. The USA wants to expand freedom. The CSA wants to limit freedom. And it wants to limit freedom because of a lot of things, then that's where all the stuff comes in, religion and racism and sexism and homophobia and transism and all the isms are there and all of those connect to one thing, fear. And the fear comes in where it is, you might take something I want from me. So it's money, or it's property, or it's position, or it's leverage, or it's ultimately it's power in some kind of way. And so to me, that's the CSA. What I learned from the CSA is that you got one country that wants to expand freedom and one country that wants to limit freedom. And that is the American struggle. That is America as a whole. And everything, and a lot of times the folks that may be interested in this freedom cause don't understand this other freedom cause, and that's a problem too. But ultimately, the CSA sees all of them the same way. They see all of them as an attack on their whiteness and their superiority, and their male superiority, and so and that was defined from the very beginning of the nation. The nation really started out as, I think, the CSA, not the USA. It started out as um, as white men, slave owners that created the country, and then there was a debate at the time it was being created that, well, maybe we don't need this slavery thing. Maybe we should get rid of it. And they said, no, we got to hold on to it. I'm not picking that tobacco. I'm not doing that. No, I'm not. No, my guys, I got people to do that. And so that debate has carried on. And then the Civil War said, okay, we're going to be two different countries. We're going to have a CSA and USA. And then the Civil Rights Movement after that said, okay, we're going to try to be the USA now. And then when Obama was elected, it became such a threat to that other group, that other CSA, that you've had this huge backlash, which is what we're living in now. And so now becomes the question of what country are you living in now, the USA or the CSA?
Which would be a great question to end the show for the panel.
One second. I'm very curious about the fragility of the individual and the fragility of the spirit of the society. I understand very clearly that when we go to industry or the government, they have an agenda. But the spirit of a country never has an agenda. The spirit of the individual doesn't really have an agenda. So where is this idea of racism coming from? It could be imposed by propaganda, which kind of doesn't work. I don't tend to agree with that because I would just say that's crazy. But there was a very interesting thing that I considered watching Green Book, and that is that Vinny cannot be a racist because perhaps the pressure of his family or the family of his wife, somehow something has put a pressure on him to bring him to the point that he finds it disgusting to touch the green glasses of the two Negroes that just drank water from it. And if you saw the film, you remember that part where he's really disgusted and he throws them in the garbage. And what I thought about it, when I thought about that, I said, how can you go from being disgusted by something that really cannot disgust you to becoming such a good friend, so deep friend until death,
My
which
answer
leads
would
me,
be bad writing.
which leads me to believe that racism in its core really does not exist because the soul of the person is in nature cannot support that. And that's the development between throwing glasses away and becoming his friend. So that's connected somehow with my intention before that when we watch a movie, especially your movie, how can we make that? I'm not really asking you, but I'm just asking myself, how can we make it more productive so that I think his name was Richard Byrd, the senator who
Right.
was KKK and then changed his mind. What happened with that guy? Why did he change his mind? I'm very curious about what made him and others like him change his mind effectively.
Well, what made Richard Byrd change his mind was the civil rights movement. What it was challenging. It was challenging the way he was brought up. He was brought up in West Virginia as a racist member of the Klan. And you got to remember, my
So,
father was
so he started seeing different things that he had
he,
not
he
seen
saw he
before.
saw he saw yes, and
Okay.
he saw things that and things progressed in his world also. So things around him started to change, and people around him started to change, and people around him started to say, "I don't think that way anymore." And then the function of the society started to change, and so this door opens up, and so whereas black people never had this job, and suddenly someone hires a black person, and now he sees a black person in this room doing this job that was told as a kid that only white people could do that job, and now he sees a black person, so that changed that affects him too. So all these things, he starts seeing black people show up on TV, and he started to see, and then so it just makes it easier for his belief system to change. It makes it easier for him to start seeing people that he saw one way as a different way. And that is why you make films like this, because there's still people out there right now that are being taught to be racist. And you got to understand, racism is an ideology. So anybody can be racist. I mean, black people can be racist. Black people can be white supremacists, and they're all black people.
Black people are very racist. Yes, correct.
Yes, black people.
Everybody is.
Everybody
Everybody
is.
is. Yes.
Yes, yeah, but black people can be white supremacists. They can believe that white people are superior,
Yes. Yes.
and so it's a belief system. It's something they've chosen to believe in, and just as homophobia is a belief system, and everything is a belief system, and so you have to challenge those things as an ideology, so that you can get to that spirit and that human side of them that you're talking about. But that doesn't happen unless the society changes and opens up and allows that person access to that new information.
Just real quick, W.E.B. Du Bois is somebody that, if you read his writings, was a white supremacist African American intellectual. and a classist one at that, quite honestly. And it supported people like Woodrow Wilson, who was segregating the White House. So I mean, we see it through history. So that's, I mean, it's not really a laughing matter.
That's right.
I like how you use comedy to get the point across too, because people are more willing to listen if you're making them laugh. They're haha, this is funny, this is funny. Oh, wait a minute, and they have to actually think about what they're laughing about. You know, it's a really great method of getting people to change their minds, I think.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, that's the thing about, the connection to today, which is, what people write me all the time and say, I just saw the film, or, and they see all these connections to today, which is obviously the connection to today is, I would say we're definitely living in the CSA. And, and before, Trump and that madness started, we kind of went back and forth between the USA and the CSA. And so but then when Obama was elected, we really kind of, the thing that was so celebrated in the country by progressives and positive people in the world was that we kind of thought we kind of had arrived at the USA, and that we really in America, people talk about a post-racial society. And but while we were doing all of that, the CSA was planning, and the CSA is always planning their attack. And they're always, when Abraham Lincoln was won the election the first time, and he didn't say one time that he was going to free the slaves. But slavery was so embedded in Southern life, just the fact that he said a couple positive things about Black people, they thought he was going to free the slaves. And so the minute he got elected, they started leaving the United States and making the CSA. The minute he got elected, and he's constantly saying, I'm not going to free the slaves. I just want the Union to stay together. I want the Union to stay together. I want the Union to stay together. And they did not believe him, because that's how much they believed in racism. That's how much racism defined and slavery defined their life, and white supremacy defined their life. And that same thing is still with us today. People, I've had so many racist people tell me, well, I have a Black friend. I got my Black friend here. I can't be racist. I have a Black friend. It's like, Donald Trump I'm sure he thinks he has Black friends.
Yes, yes.
But he's the king of racism, and that is the trouble with America, because we've not defined it in a way that people can kind of understand it, and they don't want to believe racism exists, but it's just embedded, it embodies everything that is American. And what we've been trying to do since the founding of the country is to get rid of it, is to exercise it from our being. And we kind of had it in a little box, and he opened that box up and let it all back out again. And so he's made it easy and public and acceptable to be racist again in this country,
and profitable. That's the most important part.
That's exactly, and profitable. And
before 2016, there was a financial cost.
That's right.
You had to pay to hold those beliefs. That's right. People would, lose their university position, or or their baseball team, or their television programs for it. Now it's actually profitable, because just like Robert Byrd changed his views because he saw he could stay in office by galvanizing his Black constituency. The right now has seen that they can stay in office by galvanizing their racist
That's right.
community.
That's right.
But my answer when someone says that they can't be racist because they have a black friend is I have a racist friend that doesn't mean I sympathize with their views.
That's right. But you understand they're racist, though, and that's the difference.
Yeah,
In the big difference between folks that say I got a black friend, I can't be racist, is that they don't understand that they're a racist. I mean, slave owners love their slaves. They loved them. And every time they had to sell them downriver, which ultimately meant sending them to their death, or every time they broke up their family, they said, I really feel bad that I had to take so and so's mom and sell her for, the price of a Lexus car today. I feel really bad about that, but I had to do it. But I truly do love them, and they're my friend.
Well,
And
and
the
that's the great scene in Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing" when I can't remember his name, but the Italian character is
editorial,
listing
yeah,
off, yeah, is listing off the black celebrities and says, well, they don't count. They're not black. Well, they're black, but they're not. And if that didn't make you feel uncomfortable as a white person sitting in the seats in 1989, then you weren't thinking about things because you were speaking about Hollywood, but if you're not Eddie Murphy
that's right.
and you can't get Denzel Washington in your film, then go fuck yourself.
Well, yeah, because the thing is that when you succeed in American life, whether you're black or gay or a woman or anything, you become a celebrity. And when you become a celebrity, you now transcend race and all of that stuff. You are now something else besides who you really truly are. And
until you
until
make a
and,
mistake.
until you make a mistake, and then suddenly become what you are again. And that's how it works in American life. And
Well,
and
and
you
that brings up a very important point about African and African American filmmakers. All of them seem to be held to a different standard than their white counterparts. We were talking about this with Usman Ben, who never really stretched any limits because he was the groundbreaker. He brought African cinema to the world, but he couldn't do anything that could make the white audience feel at all uncomfortable because he was carrying the weight of all the future African filmmakers on his back, and people just won't accept anything that is experimental or stretches any limits from a person of color the way that they did from, say, the French New Wave and Godard and Truffaut, who were making films around the same time.
that's right. I mean, the thing that they are the he's Jackie Robinson of African filmmakers. He has to do it in a certain way so that people go, now he's a fine filmmaker. and and that means you've got to succeed. You've got to be great. It's like Obama he had to not have any scandal, and he had to, his family has to be perfect, and he's got to do everything. It's like Sidney Poitier, breaking the actor mold. You have to do all these things perfect so that no one can, because all these people want to attack you, and any avenue you give them, they will attack you on it. So you can't give them any avenue to attack, and so that also means that you're limited in terms of how much you can throw your elbows around. And so that's one of the problems of being a first, is that you have to um, typically be a more restrained and more conservative.
I had a
Go ahead.
personal experience. That means I witnessed that directly. And that's one of my friends that I spoke about before in that small circle for the last 6 years. About just before COVID, he was talking to me, excuse me, he was talking to me about the story of the past. I don't know, maybe when he was very young, how he was defending a black person. Now, this friend of mine is Irish or Irish descendant, and he was telling me in this, we were just relaxing there, and he's telling me how he told his friend, I have your back. And for some reason, it occurred to me to ask him, do you think that it is possible for you to be a racist, whatever that is? Because I really don't know what it is, but do you think it is possible for you to be a racist while you have this friend and maybe a couple others who you really would do anything for them? And he took a couple of fractions of a second and said to me, yes. And I found that very interesting and very honest of him. But it creates for me the problem that I keep talking about. Where is this little weird seed in the human body or soul that allows you to to just accept that there is no difference between these human beings to the extent that I could call it a race that I want to reject? I don't have to spit at them. I don't have to kill them, but just the notion that I have to do some training to come over that, like Robert Byrd or Richard Byrd or anybody of the thousands and thousands of people who have done it in many countries. It really drives me crazy to to try to want to know where is this in the human body or in the human mind that even allows you to even imagine the possibility that because of this or that, I could reject you just for that, even though when we become friends, everything gets eliminated. I find that really, really odd. I don't understand it. I really don't
Well,
understand it.
let me tell you an example. Give you an example. So when I was in kindergarten, 6 years old, my first day of kindergarten, a little girl called me nigger. Now I went back home. I didn't know what nigger even was. I went home, asked my mother. I said, "This little girl called me nigger. What is that?" And she said, "My mother said you go back and call her redneck peckerwood." And so that little girl at 6 years old had already been told what a nigger was, and that I was one, and she needed to call me that. So the answer to that is that people are taught these things. They're taught they grow up in an environment of where race the word nigger is thrown around. You can you imagine how much Trump calls people niggas and use the word nigger all the time in the world that he lives in? Can you imagine that? I mean, you know, we'll hear about it after he's dead, and people will finally be honest and tell us these things. But but you can only imagine the awful, horrible, horrible things that are being said in that White House right now. And those things are being said, and those things are being accepted by people who would say they're not racist, but they're not saying one thing about them. They're not coming out and saying, oh, he said something horrible yesterday, or he said this, or so and so said that. No one's saying anything. That all will come out after he's dead. And so the reality of it is that these people were taught these things. And the thing is, they come out and they normalize it and they put it out there, and other people stay quiet and they don't respond to it and they don't reject it and they accept it. And that's how it goes. And that's why you make films so that that film becomes a weapon to fight these people back. And whether they say it or not, that's what they believe. And there's a whole bunch of people, half the country in the United States thinks that Donald Trump is okay. That means half the country is racist. Because you cannot see him do all these things and say all the things he's done and do all the things he's done and not know he's a racist. Everybody knows he's a racist, but what it means that those people that still support him don't care about racism. It means they don't care about it. And we have to admit that. We can't debate it. That's a fact. That's just a fact. And so, you know, when you see people like that, and you see, people that will, don't want to accept the fact that people are always trying to find a leg up on other people. That's almost like the American way. So whether it's race or gender or sex or sexual preference or whatever you want to call it, they're trying to find a way to be better than the other guy. Okay, that's kind of the competitive American way. And so whatever they can use to make more money than you, to get the better job than you, to get the better house than you, to get whatever, they're going to do it. and that's why it still exists.
Well, the person
So-
who makes $9.50 an hour doesn't want the minimum wage to go up above $9.50 an hour, even though they would get a raise, because they don't want the people who make less than them to make the same or more than them.
Exactly. That's why the people who don't have health care don't want other people to have health care, because that's why they support Republicans, because they say I don't care your grandma doesn't get to go to the doctor. I don't care that your mom, might have breast cancer, but she didn't have the money to go to the doctor. I don't care about that. I don't care that you get cancer and you lose your house and everything else that you own because you get this astronomical medical bill because you've gotten sick. I don't care about that. I don't want, the people that have health care, they don't say, why do these people have to go through this? Because they're not trying to care about their neighbor. And so the Republicans have been really great at selling this whole thing of things like healthcare and race and immigration, and all of these things are a threat to you. And they've made people, vote against their own interests, vote against their own health, vote against. Now they even got people believing that they shouldn't take vaccines so they can live without diseases. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, that is fucked up.
Well, there
insane.
was that book that you based the title of that documentary on, What's the Matter with Kansas, is all about. Why is the state of Kansas time and time again vote against their own self-interest?
That's right. That's right. And it's because these people can sell fear and hate, and people buy it. It's hate is a really easy thing to sell, and Americans buy it wholesale, and it's just so easy to sell, and it is hard to kind of, once someone has breathed that small again, it's hard to get it out of their lungs. And the place where you get it out of your lungs often is education. And that's why education is also being attacked, because that's
the
the place.
metaphor that I always used was like rock candy, because it's that sugar buzz that you get
Yeah.
from hate, but it wears off real quick, so you have to get more hate. And the only have you ever noticed that things never move to the center? They always move more radical. So if you say to someone who has a radical right-wing agenda, okay, I will concede this to you, that never becomes the center line, because they'll say, okay, well, yeah, but that's not good enough, and you have to concede something else, and you have to concede something else,
That's
and
right.
it never moves back to the center.
No, that's right. That's right. Because ultimately they'll concede some kind of crazy extreme thing, but they can't. But that's what they're ultimately trying to hold on to, because they know that if you give that up, then the line starts to move a little bit, and that's what they don't want to do.
Now, I
There's
want to
also-
be respectful of Kevin's time, so let's, after Erin's question, let's do one last roundup of anybody who's got any questions off the panel, and then wrap this up, because we've kept him for a very long time today.
What I was going to say, it's not really a question. It was just I was discussing free school lunches with my mom, because I think they should be free. I mean, it would
Right.
help a lot of people if school lunches were free. We're already paying the taxes to fund the schools. Why
Right.
not give the kids lunch while they're there? And her argument was that she didn't want kids who didn't need it to get it because they didn't deserve it. Like, okay, so you're going to have like one kid whose parents have no problem buying their lunches, and because of that one kid, you're going to deny the other 9 kids free lunch?
Right. Yes.
That's the mindset, is I don't want somebody else to have something I don't have. And it's insane. I want people to have things,
Or
we should all
are you
have the
going to
same
just
things, you know?
discriminate against the entire trans community because 6 of them are athletes who compete against women?
Yes,
I have
that's right.
so many thoughts about that. I could go on for hours about that whole situation.
I don't believe you. Really,
We-
Erin?
we-
On transphobia? You never.
Yeah, I know. It's never
Well,
come up on this podcast.
in Kansas, we had a, they just voted a bathroom bill, and it's horrible stuff. But then
It's horrific.
before that, they had a they try to pass a crazy law and about the sports thing. And this film I have, um, called No Place Like Home, which is how I know about Gilbert Baker. Um, that they had to pass the whole law about trans sports, and there's only one athlete in the state that was trans that was playing sports, and she was on the bowling team. That tells you how insane. But that's the kind of mentality, that's the kind of fear that can be sold to these people.
Yeah.
That's why that's why they vote against having health
They're
care.
using our bathrooms and taking our jobs.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
bullshit. It's such
And,
insane bullshit. It makes me so angry.
and it all comes from that same source. It all comes from that ultimately, I don't want freedom to expand. I don't want you to understand this group of people over here. I don't
Well,
want you to,
and not to get too digressive, but I would like to go back into when one of the more research sections of CSA, when you talk about them expanding into Latin America and expanding slavery and expanding repression and expanding white supremacy, that of course was based on people like Walker,
yes,
uh,
yes,
and his experiments there in Honduras, where he set up basically a slave state dictatorship with American backing. That is not that far off of what would have happened had the Confederacy won. Well,
yeah.
we'll
That
get
that
to
was
we'll
that
get to
was that.
whether I think the Confederacy did actually win the Civil War, but
Yeah, that's right. And that was their actual plan. I mean, one of the things that Breckinridge was the guy that was running against Lincoln. One of the things that they talked about was that if they had taken over Mexico, that they would have had 25 other slave states that could have voted for Breckinridge, and he would have beat Lincoln. That was their goal and their plan. There was a group called the Knights of the Golden Circle, who were this secret society who were made up of people that became the Confederacy. John Wilkes Booth was a member. Jesse James was a member. There were a lot of people that were members of it that were part of the cabinet of Buchanan's cabinet that was the president before Lincoln. And they were all trying to expand slavery into Mexico, Central America, the top part of South America, the Caribbean. That was their plan. That was the plan that they had. And if the Confederacy won, they obviously would have carried that out.
any other questions for Kevin before I move into our little final political spiel, and then we do our social media handles? Excellent. Well, now, Kevin, speaking as someone who grew up in Michigan, now lives in southern Georgia, like right on the Florida border, Valdosta to be exact. Uh, I have to tell you, I think when people ask me what if the Confederacy had won the Civil War, I think they lost the war, they lost the battle, which was the war itself, but they won the war. Because all I see around me is the Confederate States of America. This to me is the child of the lost cause narrative. I think that once the Civil War stopped being taught about as being about slavery and about freedom, and they could supplement tariff of abominations, which now tariffs are a good thing. I know, blah, 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 blah. I'm not asking it to make sense. But once they could say to themselves that the people who raised arms against their own country were acting in a right way, that there was no going back, because how do you would then backtrack after that? And I see it everywhere that we go. I see it on television. I see it in the president's speeches. And to your point, I saw it during the Obama administration just as much. Because why was it that Obama couldn't have a single scandal? Why couldn't his IRS even investigate fraudulent tax?
Why couldn't he even wear a tan suit?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And to me, it's because the South, won. But let's go around the panel, and that'll be our final thoughts for this episode. Are we currently living in the Confederate States of America?
I would say
I
yes.
guess we'll start with Erin.
Yeah. I would say unequivocally yes. I mean, look at what these people are doing. And okay, so hang on a second. My dog's being stupid. Okay, so
I would normally say that the background filter will take it out, but I don't know with Zoom if it will. So
I don't know. It's okay. He's just staring at me because he wants me to feed him, even though it's too early. Anyway, so I grew up conservative, which sucks. I learned better once I got away from bad influences in my life, and I'm pretty much a socialist now. But I've seen how conservative ideals have affected my family, have been in my family, have been passed down through my family. I watched how my dad slowly lost his mind watching Fox News. I mean, the best example I can think. Hang on, I'm sorry, my dog's being. Sorry. Let me try again. I think the best example of him being completely insane is when I was growing up, he was worried about hantavirus because he has a company that works on generators, and sometimes there are mouse nests in there, and he was concerned that his technicians would encounter mouse droppings and get hantavirus. So he had procedures for how to not do that. And then COVID came along, and he didn't believe in the vaccine. He didn't believe it was a real virus. Only 3% of people who catch it will die. That's a lot of people, you know? And it's all from Fox News. It's all from watching this propaganda that is, making him stupid when I know he's not stupid. Um, and it's just
did
been
you
that way
hear that,
for.
Erin's dad? She doesn't think you're
Oh,
stupid.
he doesn't
No,
listen to
she
this.
doesn't listen to this show.
He doesn't listen to this. He doesn't care about anything I do. I don't talk to my dad anymore. That's, for reference. Um, but he's just following what his parents taught him and what their parents taught them for generations. And the fact that my brother and I don't believe any of that anymore is kind of a coup because all of my cousins still think that way. Um, it's so inherent in um, white society. We all have at least one cousin that believes something stupid that we know is wrong, but you don't want to make trouble at Thanksgiving. And that's why nothing ever changes. We don't want to make trouble. Well, we have to make trouble. We have to stand up and make a lot of noise and tell them that they're wrong and what they're doing is terrible and teach our kids better. Um, on the plus side, my son reads books on anti-racism, so at least maybe I've had a good influence there. But I mean, I'm just one person. It's anyway, yeah, we're living in the worst timeline right now, especially the backlash to Obama just existing has really brought it to the surface.
Jennifer?
I'm sitting in everything that Erin just said.
Wakey, eggs and bakey.
No, I'm here. I'm awake. And yes, it's a nightmare that we're living in currently, for sure. And
See, now that's not my point. My
there,
point is that it's always been a nightmare.
mm,
My point is not that that we're living in extraordinary times. My point is quite the opposite, that it's always been on fire and it's always been shit. My father had to deal with World War II and the Civil Rights Movement. His father, Vietnam, and his father had to deal with World War II. My great grandmother survived in southern France and Hungary during World War I, and then survived the Spanish. Yeah, it's always been shit. That's my point.
okay, I hear that point. I mean, it is true like even with the racism, I mean, I agree when Sila said that everyone is racist, right? There is a level of that across the board, but I there's a whole new wave of people. I mean, there's been plenty of people that don't see, never want to see. It's gone down through generations, but then there's other people that just, it, again, like that we cured racism in the United States. Like we're over this. Like this is behind us, and I agree with that. And I don't. It's always been. I mean, I don't think racism went away. It's here. It's been here. It's been very veiled, and now people are emboldened to be even. Uh, I just feel like it's been elevated to a new level of uh, comfort level of not. I mean, on the one hand, it's refreshing in that they're not hiding it anymore, right? Like they're just right out there and it can be seen. But then there's all these other people that just don't see what they don't want to see. Like they just have their blinders on or they're in their little vacuum and they're just like, what are you talking about? It's perfectly fine. And I'm like, how is it perfectly fine? It's not perfectly fine. Um, so I don't know if that makes sense of what I'm saying, but there's
That makes
just
perfect sense, Jennifer. And
I
I
mean in
think
my
it's time we came clean. No one on this panel actually thinks Paul Haggis solved racism or that Crash is even a very good movie. That was satire.
mm,
But Brokeback Mountain cured homophobia.
Oh, entirely and completely.
oh my goodness.
One of my
Oh, I
cousins
had
makes
something
fun of my
else.
other cousin and calls him Brokeback as a, as a joke. Neither one of them is gay. They just use it as a joke because that's this level of
As a
humor that it
as
has.
a pejorative, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't talk
Yes.
to most of that side of the family anymore. I have like one cousin on that side that I talk to,
Yeah.
and
Just for
we don't
anyone
talk about it.
for the very few people who that listened to the Coonskin episode, we were kidding. We were kidding. Sheila Bloom, your thoughts there from New York City on are we living in the Confederate States of America?
I would not use the comparison at all. Obviously not because I think we are fine, but because I think it's worse now. Let's say a few decades ago, several decades ago, we had not been to the moon, which taught us some things, at least in terms of possibilities. A couple of decades ago, we did not have access to the most historical, profound information within seconds as we do today. That means, as opposed to before 2000, now pretty much anyone in India, in Ecuador, in New York, in Idaho can take their iPhone or whatever they call that and ask, when did Elvis Presley die? And find out right away. We know so much today, and we have heard about Hitler so many times. So many times. We have heard through Roberto Benigni about Hitler. We have heard through so many different ways about so many things. We know so much more. We have so much more information today than the last 100 years that when we look at what we are doing today in terms of attacking other leaders, attacking other countries, attacking our own family, whatever we are doing today, when we compare it to when we were doing it 200 years ago because we knew less or we had less information or whatever, I think you all know what I'm talking about. For that reason, I find that yeah, we are much, much worse today because we should know better.
That's great, Scylla. And last but not least, Kevin.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that he makes some valid points there. But as much as the internet and everything gives us access to all this wonderful information, Americans are not very smart. They're not very smart, and I think that's something that you can't deny. I mean, here you had someone that just tried to overthrow the country on January 6th, and we reelected him. I mean, how dumb do you have to be to do that? I mean, it's just kind of astounding how
Pretty goddamn dumb.
pretty goddamn dumb. And so that to me, it says that we have access to all this amazing information, and obviously we're not accessing any of it. And we're not asking the right questions, and we're not asking questions at all, and we don't know our history. And
And
so
we
we just
don't care.
and we don't care.
We simply don't care because
We
we
don't care.
continue.
That's
Well,
right.
here's my metaphor for why so much information being available on the internet has actually made us more stupid. It's the same as when I tried to quit smoking and I used the patches and I was able to quit smoking. But because I could always just go get the patches, whenever I was attempted to start smoking again, well, in the back of my head, I'm like, because I never put myself through withdrawal, I could just get more patches. So I just get myself addicted to smoking again. When the information is this easy to access, when you don't have academic rigor to gain the information, when there is nothing to your being able to look up a date or what have you, you don't have to, for instance, when it comes to cinema, and I went through the Michigan State University Ken Haro's African cinema class. If I could just have AI write up a history of African cinema and not have to go through 6 months of Ken Haro's class and watching those films and come out with the same information, it's not going to be the same because the cost to learn it was not the same. And so I am not sacrificing enough to make the actual having of that information worthwhile.
Yes, I agree.
Any last thoughts before we move on to our social media handles?
I mean, I have said that I feel like we're like, I guess in my lifetime, more polarized than we've been, and more uh, like closer to civil war in modern times, right? Like I just, yes, it's always been here and it's really bad, but it's just, I feel like it's escalating at a rate. And part of the other thing I worry about with everything that we're saying, and is that getting to the point of othering and dehumanizing each other so much is really, I don't know, I feel like we need to take pause within ourselves and remember, I mean, we are all humans, and keeping that in mind and keeping some level of, because to go down this path with people that I mean, you said it earlier, you hinted at it, but are Holocaust deniers, are slavery deniers, are saying we never went to the moon, Sila, like
Right.
it's hard to not other.
That's right.
um
And they've made it so easy to other. They've made it so easy, you know? You know, Fox News others people all day long, all day and all night.
yeah,
And and there's three or four other channels that do it now. And there's not one channel that CNN isn't countering that. MS now, great channel in a lot of ways, but they can't fully counter it. There's no the other channels are pure propaganda. They're just pure propaganda. And they have no apologies about just being pure propaganda. And my argument is that if there had been Fox News in 1963, when Dr. King is launching the civil rights movement, when they put those fire hoses on those kids, and the whole all of America said, "Oh my God, that's so horrible. This is maybe my attitude has changed about civil rights, and maybe this Dr. King guy and what they're doing is maybe it is a good thing." If there had been Fox News then, and they had existed, and they would have said they would have had the counter story when CBS and NBC and ABC were saying, "Oh, but look how horrible this is," and Fox News would have been there, and they could have said, "Oh, those black kids getting hit with those fire hoses, they were assaulting white women the whole damn time." And that's why they put those fire hoses on. And now we have Bull Connor. Tell us how you feel about it, Bull Connor. And Bull Connor would have said, "Oh, those niggas was doing all kind of horrible shit." And suddenly, you lose the civil rights movement, and you don't have the civil rights movement.
Well, and yeah, that's an excellent point because George Wallace was never on
Yes.
Face of the Nation.
No.
You know.
Yes.
Whereas,
and when they did have him on, they attacked him. They didn't have him on like
even William F. Buckley wouldn't have those type of people on his show.
That's right. That's right.
Because there was. So maybe it is worse. I don't know. Here's where and maybe this is a gut feeling. I just think that maybe it's more out in the open now, but it was always there.
And it sells. That's why it's a big reason why it's so tortured. It sells. Yeah.
Well, we've never had it where, the real news media never did that because they were too smart to do that. The smarter you are, the more freedom you believe in. The dumber you are, the more you hate freedom. And so when they saw Black people trying to be free, they were sympathetic to it because they were smarter people. Now, not all of them were for it, but most of them were. Most of them were sympathetic, and most of them saw what was happening with those fire hoses. They saw that they saw that as wrong. But they don't see murdering Renee Good in Minnesota as wrong on Fox. If they do feel like it's wrong, they're not going to say it out loud because they know the people that own Fox believe that they want to kill Renee Good. And so that's the reality of it. So that never existed in America until now. And they have 5 or 6 other channels now that are saying the same thing. And the Democrats have no channel, not one.
Because it doesn't sell. Because it's not profitable.
That's what they believe. I believe that you can do any damn thing in America if you know how to do it.
Well, that is true.
You mentioned Buckley before. I think that's another problem I see today, that the conversation, the intellectual and otherwise just plain, deep, serious conversation probably does not really exist anymore.
No.
When I think of the debate between Buckley and James, come on, why don't I remember
Baldwin?
James Baldwin.
Yeah.
Just say James Baldwin so I can edit it together there.
At least from my mind, the way I remember it, I've heard it a couple of times. I heard intelligence from both sides. I might disagree with one side, but it was still a conversation where both listened to each other. That does not happen today.
No.
And I think the more we communicate, and I'm not talking about conversation, I'm talking about communication by texting and by spelling you instead of YOU, etc. There is no conversation taking place, and that's why Fox is so successful. Because
now, I don't want to extend this episode too much, but I disagree with you 100%. Because if you watch that debate, William F. Buckley literally says he doesn't think Black people should be allowed to vote to James Baldwin's face because they are too stupid. It's always been this way. The John Birch Society before William F. Buckley, before the John Birch, it's always been this way. It's just before there was a financial cost to it, and now it's actually profitable.
I cannot object to that, obviously. I'm referring to the possibility of having the conversation openly, and I don't think that's possible today.
No, I think that's right. I mean, and the problem is, one of the reasons you don't see it also is because there's no money in that, because we're not very smart. And so most people are not interested in that conversation. And that audience
that's a fact too, yes.
I mean, because it with media, it's all about the money. So, you got to have, you know, asses in the seats watching it to get on TV. So, I mean, the smarter something is, the harder it is for you to find it.
And that's why I like
And
comedy as a way to change people's minds. It puts the asses in the seats. People like to laugh. People want to be entertained.
That's right.
That's
That's
why I
right.
like satire and comedy.
That's
but
right.
as Karl Marx once said of Hegel's proposition that history repeats itself, Marx said that's true, but first is tragedy and then is farce. Guess which one I think we're living through now.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So I would ask one concluding question from my side. Uh, Considering the several things we have talked about today, if you had the chance, Kevin, to
Yes.
make this movie again, based on what you know today, in terms of what this person in the White House is, in terms of the reactions to your film has been, if you had a chance to produce the movie again from step one, would you do it with less but more brutal stuff? Or would you make it much, much simpler to digest so more people understand exactly, not that it is a mockumentary, not that it's satire, but really straightforward so that it really, really hurts?
Well, it's, it's kind of a long answer, but so a few years ago, I wrote a script about Joe McCarthy, the president, Senator Joe McCarthy becoming president, and was it was going to be in the same CSA um, approach, mockumentary kind of thing, faux documentary. And the difficulty I had with I wrote the script, but the difficulty I had with it was all the all the things that they weren't going to be commercials in it, but there were things that were humorous in the film, showing the absurdity of Joe McCarthy becoming president. All the things that I was showing like that were kind of the entertaining part of the film. The Republican Party kept doing in real life to more extreme than I could satire it. If, for instance, I had a scene in there where there was a politician that was shooting a machine gun, and they had immigrants running from the machine gun, running over a wall, and they were talking about, vote for me because I know I'll get tough on these foreigners. And every 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 commercial you see now for Republicans, they're shooting a machine gun in real life. Every one. And uh and so I could not kind of out satire. I could not out absurd the absurdity of our lives.
Mm.
So there's the problem you have is that it's it's got to come back to it's got to hit the wall, and we're either going to lose America or whatever is going to happen. It's got to hit the wall, and this thing's got to die. What I mean is the crazy extreme thing that's happening now is going to have to stop, or there is going to be no response pretty soon, because you can't you can't tell a joke in Nazi Germany. You know, I mean, it just don't no matter what movie you make and what joke you tell and what satire you create, if half the country is hate, then you're just not living in any kind of civilized society anymore. And that's we're quickly approaching that. I think we're quickly approaching that. And no one's going to say it out loud, but that's going to be the reality of it. And so so that's really the question you pose. That's ultimately the problem of that question is that while we still kind of have this semi-civilized kind of open-minded world that might could intake something like that, uh, you could maybe make a movie like that still, but that window is rapidly closing.
MESA, make extremism satire again.
Yes. It's hard to out mega mega.
The Gulf of America, for instance.
Yes.
If you had written that into one of your scripts, everyone would have said, "Okay, that's that's not
Well,
funny because that's just But
well, one of the things people love about CSA is the wall, the cotton curtain. You
Right.
know, there's the whole thing of the wall, and now we all we
and
talk
the
about
and the
is
war with
wall.
Canada.
That's right.
By the way, did Bill Clinton write to you asking for some money for the fact that you used his wall?
Yeah. Um, no, I never heard anything back from those guys, but
Fair use.
but I voted for Bill. I like Bill. Bill's all right. He's not a bad guy. He just lied when he shouldn't have lied. Uh, uh, and
And probably spent a little bit too much time on Epstein's Island.
probably, well, yeah, not defending him on any way, but yeah, I mean, and that's Bill Clinton's problem.
Well, and if you look at his Clinton Foundation, he spent way too much time on billionaires' islands, period.
Yes, that's right.
And so I think that is emblematic of a much deeper problem in our
Yes,
society.
yes, that's right. That's right.
All right, let's do our social media roundup. We'll start with Sila Blume. Where can people find you on the internet?
You could follow me on silablume.life, where I display most of the work I do.
Jennifer Trujillo, where can people find you and the Gilbert Baker Film Festival online?
Gilbert Baker Film Festival.lgbt, and on Instagram, Gilbert Baker Film Fest. And on Instagram, you'll find a link tree that will connect you to all things Gilbert Baker. And you can also connect with me there. And don't forget to connect with us in the comments. Talk to us. Give us your opinions about the show and things that we do here. Thanks.
Erin Brown, where can people find you and our podcast on the interwebs?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Toad Puppy, and you can find me on YouTube at Pizza Horse Productions. And the podcast is at ko-fi.com/world cinema history. We've got all of our back catalog there. We've got a place where you can comment. Please comment. Please join us in the discussion because it's a lot of fun. And you can leave us a tip because that would help us out too. That would help us upgrade our audio equipment and help us not have to get ads on this site. We want to stay ad free. So yeah, come to ko-fi.com/world cinema history and check us out.
Although I might do some of those ads from CSA throughout
I
this
would support that.
episode.
I would support that. Those are amazing.
There's one.
If it's fair use, Kevin. We're describing the movie. It's fair use. I don't want to see a copyright claim from you.
Right. Get my lawyer on you, dude.
Kevin, where can we find you on the internet?
Well, I'm not much on the. I'm not much.
Well, where can people get updated on your work?
You can. Well, I don't even know about that, but I'm occasionally on Facebook, so you can find me on there.
I'll just cut that completely out. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here, Kevin. That was a great conversation. Listeners, please join us next week when we continue our exploration of the Southern identity and the visual language of history with Emmy winner Jethro Waters. He'll be discussing his work, including Gunfighter Paradise and his unique connection to the American South. Thank you, everybody. I'm Eric Trommater, and thank you for listening to World Cinema History. Okay, this is a point where everybody says, oh, I wish I'd said blah, blah, blah. And I have to edit it back into the podcast because, of course, there's nothing like ending the podcast to sharpen people's minds. So we'll start with Kevin. Is there anything you wish that you had said if you'd had more time?
No, it's all good, my friend.
Excellent, excellent. And I only made one mistake on the script, so this has been a good week for me. Sheila Blume, anything you feel like you didn't have enough time to say?
Well, there was a short moment I believe it was a back and forth between Erin and Kevin, and I wanted to make a comment on that in terms of the the idea of collaboration, how this has its own dynamic and it works very well in that collaboration system. And I was thinking right after that that it is a very different way of doing things. When you work for me or I work for you, can never be the same as we are collaborating. And I wanted to underline that. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, Sila. Sila thinks in German, so the verbs are always at the end of his sentence. Jennifer Trujillo, anything that you didn't have a chance to say or thought of too late?
I don't know that it needs to be edited in, but I did want to say it in this space while we were here. Um, sort of along the lines of people don't see what they don't want to see, or framing it in a way that works for them, was the whole part of slavery where they had um, fancy, I don't know how to say it, fancy shackles that were like jewelry, and like
Yes, that was crazy.
having the slaves that are you're my daughter's best friend, and these kids believing they're their friends, or yeah, it's, I don't know, it sort of lands into all of the weirdness of all of this. And then I tried to explain that to someone and they were like, that didn't happen. I'm like, oh, how can you think it didn't happen? Uh, anyways,
Children are
sorry.
befriending AI, for God's sakes. You don't think a parent's going to buy if they could buy them a human being for their obnoxious child that nobody likes, that to have somebody pretend like they like them, they wouldn't?
Yeah. Just like the other twisted level of that, and sort of hiding it, right? Like to deny it, and like eh, it's, that fancy shackle is no different than the raw metal shackle, is no different than, I mean, it's worse almost, even in my mind, just to try to hide it.
Oh,
So
there's so much
Cage
in
is still a cage.
CSA that predicts the future.
a cage is
I,
still a cage, Aaron. You
A
nailed
golden
it.
cage is still a cage, yeah.
Yeah.
speaking
What?
of
I didn't
Erin,
hear.
anything you didn't get to say?
No, I think I said everything that I wanted to say. I do want to say right now, Kevin, thank you for being here. This has been so freaking fun. This has
Oh,
been a
great.
great discussion. I'm enjoying it so much.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no
Yeah, we
problem.
really appreciate you coming on. We're more of a foreign film podcast, and so you're coming on. Really, it means a lot to us because, but I want to make sure that you understand we want to set your work in the same category as when we're speaking of Godard, when we're speaking of Fellini, when we're speaking, yeah, that to me, the reason why you fit on the show is it was not because I thought you'd be a popular guest, but because you would be a natural one with the discussions that we have on it. So just
Correct.
so you know.
Correct.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you for giving us so much of your time and putting up with the frustration of Riverside.
Oh, no.
I deeply apologize about that.
Oh, man. Not at all, Eric. I appreciate you, man.
Now, what I do, I will send you a copy of this episode. So if you said something where you're like, maybe I shouldn't have, any public figure, I give them 2 days from the day I send it to send me back a note asking for anything to be removed. I don't care what it is. I say stuff that I wish I hadn't every episode that I have to edit out. But if I do that for public figures, so look for that in your inbox. If I don't hear from you within 48 hours, the episode just goes live. So because I don't want you to feel like you have to respond to it. You
Sure.
only have to respond if there's something you want removed.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, hey, thanks again, everybody. It's great meeting everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. This has been a long time dream of mine since my wee early 30s when I was holding my baby girl and the wind was coming through that window. This is, I never could have imagined that I would actually have Kevin Willmott in the same space as myself. So
Oh, well, thank you, my friend. Man, yeah,
thank you.
great meeting you,
Longtime
bud.
fan. May you keep working until forever.
Right on,
Do
brother.
like Ken Russell and die behind the camera.
Amen. Amen. That's what I tell all my friends. Hope they could.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks now. Appreciate you
All
guys.
right.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. All right. Jennifer, you can end this whenever you want now.
Oh, okay. Oh, like kill the Zoom? What?
You're in
I'm in
charge.
charge?
You're in
Well,
charge.
what I was thinking, okay, I can
You
do
don't
that
want
and
to
then
be
I'll
in
connect with
charge?
you.
You're thinking you don't want to be in charge. I'm going out
I'm
for a
happy to
cigar.
be in
I'm going out for
charge.
a cigar right now. I'm having a nicotine fit. I'm going outside
All
for a
right.
cigar.
I might go have a cigar too. It's fun.
I want to get you the recording. So you guys go get your cigar and I will stop recording and then get this to you. Okay? Sounds so good.
Thanks for
Okay,
hosting this, Jen.
good night, everyone.
Man,
See you
I
later.
hope it works. Man, I hope it works.
It'll work. It'll work. Think positive.
It will
Yeah, yeah,
work.
yeah.
It will work. Jennifer, you said people do this all the time.
They do it all the time. All right, we're stopping recording.